you actually intend on having children one day?
6 of them.
How many of you actually have children already? Alright, so how many of you also actually want to be successful in your careers one day? That's just about everyone. So that being said, a lot of you raise your hands for both, but here's the thing. As you go into the workforce, you may actually find that you may have to make a compromise between actually having a family and also being successful in your career. This is actually highly problematic, which is why I want to talk to you today about actually how the United States needs to implement some sort of form of mandatory parental leave, especially if it's paid. So I'm going to go over a few things today. One, how it actually works in the status quo for the United States and also other nations as well. Second, I'm going to go over why not having parental leave is actually very much problematic. And finally, I'm going to go over the net benefits of actually implementing parental leave. So that being said, let's go right into it. First, how does it actually work? So according to the US government website from the Department of Labor, currently parental leave is dictated by the FMLA, so the Family and Medical Leave Act. And so basically what this says is that all employers need to guarantee job protection for leave, right? So if a mom has a child, or a father has a child, or adopts a child, what actually happens is you get 12 weeks of job protection. So you can be gone and they can't fire you, but the thing is, one, it's not paid, and two, what you actually see is that even to get that, you actually have to have worked for a certain amount of time, and this is only applicable to companies that have a certain amount of people. And what the US government website, the White House government website actually noted is that most people, even then, about, I think, only 40% of Americans can even access this type of leave. So we see that it's not really accessible to everyone, and even then it's not paid, so that actually causes a lot of problems, which I'll talk about later. On the other hand, let's look at what happens in other countries. What we actually know is that, and I have an image up here as far as like where we rank in terms of government supporting people with time off, and you can take a look at that. Estonia has the highest, the US is kind of down there. But what we actually know with other countries is that the United States, according to PBS.org, in conjunction with Papua New Guinea, these are the only 2 countries in the world that don't implement some sort of maternal leave. So aside from that though, the US is the only developed nation that does not implement some sort of paid leave from others as well. And this has actually caused a lot of problems. I'll get into that as my second point. But again, what we see here is like, US kind of down there, a lot of the European, especially Scandinavian countries actually have higher rates of leave. Here's another illustration which I found interesting. The US provides 0 days, and a lot of other countries, to include Saudi Arabia and other places in the Middle East that aren't known for being socially progressive, have forms of paid leave, whereas the United States literally has such, and this is actually highly problematic. So I actually talked to one of my United Nations teammates. He's actually Norwegian. He has a master's and a bachelor's already. He's a history teacher, and he actually talked to me about how it works in Norway. So in Norway, what actually happens is that if you decide to have a child, your employer is required to give, if you go for a year, you get 80% of your salary back. If you go for 10 months, you get your full salary back. And you're required to give the mother 1/3 of the time of leave, the father 1/3, and then the parents can decide on their own what to do with that last third. And if you look at a lot of Scandinavian nations that are a lot more socialized and have these sort of policies implemented, they have a lot higher rates of education and a lot higher rates of success as a nation as well. So these are actually positive trends that I actually would like to see happen in the United States as well. So going into it though, what actually happens when you don't implement paid leave, right? So what we actually see is that a lot of times parents go into debt. They actually have to compromise between raising their family or actually working. And what we see is that they can't always effectively do this. So a lot of parents don't have the time to actually work and take care of their child. So what actually happens is, in a lot of cases, is according to, where's this again? The economic policy editor of Think Progress, Bryce Covert, what she says actually happens is that parents do wind up going into debt because one of them, if not both of them, are no longer working and are now taking care of their child. So what happens then is, of course, they go into debt because they're not making money while they're taking care of their child, and it actually causes a lot of problems. They default into debt, they declare bankruptcy, they have to rely on paying credit cards, on top of credit cards, and that puts them further into debt, and this is highly problematic. We actually see also is that because there is no official paid leave for parents, we see a higher level of discrimination against women in the workforce. And this was actually noted in a, by The Guardian. There was a Pulitzer Prize winning study that showed that 40% of managers avoid hiring younger women
because you know, they don't give out maternity leave, which means that there's a higher chance that the women are going to leave the workforce completely. And so they're more likely to hire the man than the woman. If we were to implement some sort of paid leave for both parents, men and women, you're not necessarily going to see the same level of discrimination, because now it's applicable to both, and the chances of both leaving are equally likely. And so that's another reason why implementing some sort of leave for both parents would actually be really effective. So also, why is this problematic? A lot of women are leaving the workforce, and this just causes the economy to kind of just, you know, and you know, it just isn't fair to women in general, because now, again, the man is working, the woman isn't able to advance in her career. This is really problematic. So finally, what are the net benefits of actually employing some sort of leave? What we actually see is that, for example, right, Blue State Digital, a consulting firm that helps with campaigning and whatnot, they noted that they actually do want to implement some form of leave. And the reason for this is because it's sort of like a return investment. If you show that you actually care about your employees, they're more likely to actually be happy working for you and stay longer working for you. Whereas if you don't give them some sort of form of paid leave, and they actually have to leave because now they can't afford to work and take care of their child, what you note is actually you're going to have to go through another process of hiring someone who's equally qualified, and that in itself expends a lot of resources and time, and they feel like this is highly ineffective. So what we see is that people, including companies, actually want a form of paid leave as is. So that being said, this will also actually help to further promote the economy, because what you see is, again, women aren't leaving the workforce. We have people contributing equally in society. Women are not forced to actually forfeit their position within their company because of the fact that they want to take care of a family. And you don't have this dualism anymore that people often have to face otherwise. So that being said, what have we talked about today? We've talked about why leave is important, how it actually is implemented in the United States versus other countries, why it's not beneficial to not have it, and how it actually is finally beneficial to have it. We actually know too, finally, to conclude, is that what we want to do by implementing this sort of policy is put forth some sort of social norm, right? What we see is that a lot of times what we value in society is reflecting in our laws. If we were to implement some sort of policy that showed that we value the family and we value parents and children, that could actually be further reflected throughout society. Parents are you know, present, and children are our future, and both should be valued and should actually have a good quality of life. And this can be further implemented through actually implementing paid parental leave. Thank you.
Ashlynn.
Right, way to get that in. 7 minutes, 12 seconds. You were right on with your time, like you said. Thank you. Great, thank you.
That is so scary. That's like seeing yourself.
Sorry.
I know. Wait, try to do it. Try to do it.
Okay, I was going to ask you. I'm so sad.
This is Ashlynn. Yes, you are.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Hi, thank you.
Oops.
And